guys, and welcome back to my Evilness podcast. Today we will be talking about the unsolved case of the Beaumont children. Jane Natia, who was 9, Arrna Kathleen, who was 7, and Grant Ellis, who was 4 at the time of their disappearance. They disappeared on the 26th of January, which was Australia Day in 1966. And my internet is being silly and mucking up my background music, so I just changed it. Hopefully this one is better. Anyways, the Beaumonts were a happy little family and they lived in South Australia. The 3 Beaumont children were making a very short trip to Glen Elg Beach, which is in the suburb of Adelaide in the state of South Australia. It's a very popular tourist attraction and the children were familiar with the area. Now, in Australia in the 60s, a lot of children were allowed to go to the beach by themselves. It wasn't unusual at all. This was not the first time that the Beaumont children had gone to the beach alone. In fact, they had done so just the day before. January in Australia is summertime, so it was very hot outside. Between 8:45am and 10am on the 26th of January, the children set off to the beach. There are different times reported from different sources, but most are between those times of 8:45 and 10am. Nancy Beaumont, the children's mother, had given them just enough money for bus fare to the beach and to get some food while they was there. The beach was only 2 miles from their house, a 5-minute bus ride. Jane, the eldest of the Beaumont children, was known to be very responsible and trustworthy, and her parents felt comfortable with her looking after the other 2. Nancy had told the children to catch the afternoon bus so that they would be back by 2 p.m. at the latest. Nancy had plans to visit a friend while they were at the beach, and Grant, also known as Jim, their father, was at work. When 2 p.m. came and the children still had not returned, Nancy was a little worried, but thought perhaps they've just missed the bus and were waiting for the next one. But when the children still had not arrived home by the time Jim got home from work at about 3, Jim decided to go down to the beach to look for them. Jim searched the beach, and when he didn't find any sign of them, Jim and Nancy started searching the surrounding areas near their house, the neighbours' houses, checking anywhere that they could think of, but they found nothing. At 5 p.m, they decided it was time to contact the police and file a missing persons report. The laws back in the 60s were much different to what they are today, and a lot of missing persons were not considered an actual missing person until they had been gone for at least 24 hours. So people weren't as quick to call when someone was missing as what they would be today. However, the police did jump on this case very quickly. They organised a search team who went and searched the entire beach. Within 24 hours, the entire nation was aware of the missing Beaumont children. It became the largest search in South Australian history. On the nights that the children went missing, a woman had told police that she had seen the children earlier that day. She said she had spoken with them near the Padawonga boat haven. On the 29th of January, the Padawonga boat haven was drained, thinking that the children had likely drowned in the marina. They thought that this would help in their search, but this failed to produce any evidence or any leads, which is strange as the children had a combined total of 17 items with different things such as bags, towels, money, etc. So it was thought to be strange that if the children had drowned, that not a single item belonging to any of them was found. Another witness, a woman, said she saw the children at around 11 a.m. and claims to have seen them playing near a grassy area near the beach, playing in the sprinklers and having fun. She also said that she saw a man that looked like he was in his 30s just creepily watching them. Then she said eventually this man started interacting with the children, and it wasn't long before all the children were playing with him. And this may not have been the first time that the children had encountered this man, as the day before, when the children had returned home from the beach, Arrna had remarked to their mother, "Jane has a boyfriend." Yet another witness said they saw the man helping the children put their shorts back on over their swimsuits. She also saw them waiting for the man outside of the dressing room while he was getting changed. She said she didn't think anything of it because the children seemed happy and comfortable. She just assumed that the children knew them. Nancy and Jim, however, thought this was very weird, as their daughter Jane was a very shy girl. They said that they would never have thought of Jane as being someone who would even talk to a stranger, much less go somewhere with him willingly. At around 12 p.m, another witness said they had seen the children at a bakery. They were buying some pastries and a meat pie. For those of you unaware what a meat pie is, this sounds weird for Australian viewers, but there are people that do not know. Listeners, sorry. For those who do not know what a meat pie is, and that sounds strange to Australian listeners because we're all like, meat pie. But it's basically pastry with mincemeat and gravy stuffed into a pie, pretty much. And they are delicious with tomato sauce. And never mind, that's what a meat pie is. Anyway, the baker who worked there said that he remembered the children coming in. They had ordered the meat pie, which he thought was a little unusual because normally they didn't order a pie. They said the meat pie was for the man. At this point, police are thinking that the last time the children were seen was at about 3 p.m, which was when a postman claimed to have seen the children walking in the general direction of their house. He said the children were holding hands and laughing. However, the postman who contacted the police figured out that he saw them in the morning, that he got confused, and it wasn't actually the afternoon. Don't know. So this makes the last confirmed sighting of the Beaumont children at around 11 a.m. at the bakery. Months passed without any answers or clues, and then one day a woman came forward and claimed that she saw a man walking with 2 girls and a boy into a house near hers, but she believed that the house was abandoned and that no one was currently living there. This case really shook Australia. It had always been a very safe place, so this hurt us. This kind of thing just did not happen, especially in the 60s and especially not in Australia. It just was unheard of. On the 8th of November, a man from the Netherlands named Gerard Crosset, I believe is how you say it, was brought to Australia to help with the search. Now this one's going to get me. He was a parapsychologist, which is the study of alleged psychic phenomena and other paranormal occurrences. For example, that are linked to near-death experiences, synchronology, apparitions, and things like that. That's according to Wikipedia. And he was also a psychic. So it's a weird combination, but anyway. But in the science field, parapsychology is not taken very seriously, and it's not really known to be credible. However, Gerald said that he had had a vision of where the children were, and Gerald was known for working on missing persons cases in the past. Although a lot of psychics do, some are complete failures, basically. Like, sometimes Gerald was wrong and sometimes he was right. I guess it was kind of a luck of the draw thing, like many psychics. So the police were kind of like, why not take a chance with him? And the family agreed with this. So Gerald identified a warehouse near the home that he thinks the children are buried under. It was under construction at the time that the children went missing, and he thinks they were buried into the construction under the concrete base. He specifically said that their remains would be in an old brick kiln. The people who owned the warehouse were hesitant to let them dig it up, especially basing the search on simply on the psychic's word, but ultimately they agreed. The public raised $40,000 for the warehouse to be demolished, and the owners agreed, so it was demolished. But unfortunately, this led to nothing. They found nothing after they demolished this warehouse. About 2 years after the children went missing, Jim and Nancy received letters in the mail. Now, these letters were apparently written by Jane, and the other one was written by the man. This man claimed that he was keeping the kids. The envelope was postmarked to Dandenong, Victoria, which is about 450 miles away from Glen Elg. Jim and Nancy were sure that one of the letters, the one that Jane had allegedly written, pretty much described her life being pretty good with the man, and police believed the letters to be legit because they compared them to Jane's handwriting in the past and it matched. The letter from the man said he had devoted himself as the children's guardian and was raising them as his own. However, he did say that he would be willing to give them back if the parents would meet him at a certain place at a certain time. So they did this, and they also hired a private detective who followed them as they drove to this spot. But when they arrived, there was no one there. They waited for a while and still no one came. After this, they received another letter from the man. This time, he said that he had decided not to give the children back because they had betrayed his trust by bringing a private investigator along. Naturally, this was extremely upsetting for both Jim and Nancy. But in 1992, new forensic examinations of the letters showed that they were a hoax. Fingerprint technology had improved, and the author of the letters was identified as a 41-year-old man who had been a teenager at the time and had basically written the letters as a cruel joke, and because of all the time that had passed, he wasn't charged with anything. There are a few known suspects in the case. The first is Bevan von Enum. Bevan was sentenced to life in prison in 1984 for murdering a 15-year-old named Richard Kelvin. Around the same time, police started to suspect Bevan as potentially being involved in the Beaumont case. During the investigation into Bevan, police heard from a source that apparently they had a conversation with him and he allegedly bragged having taken the children from the beach a few years earlier and said that he had taken them home and conducted experiments on them. He boasted he had performed a brilliant surgery on them, where he somehow connected all the bodies up in like a human centipede sort of thing. He said that one of the children had supposedly died during this, so he killed the other two and claims to have dumped the bodies out in Adelaide, in the middle of nowhere. So we will wrap up part 1 there. Thank you so much for listening. I'll do part 2 right now. Bye. Hi guys, and welcome back to my Evilness podcast. Today we have part 2 of the Beaumont children case. So we were talking about one of the suspects, Bevan. Now, police had not previously considered him a suspect, but once they heard this strange story, they started noticing he looked similar to the police sketches that were released back in 1966. Investigators believed this man to be a credible source, so they took him seriously, but there was enough to argue against his involvement. The biggest thing is he would have been a lot younger than the man was thought to be. The suspect was thought to be in his late 30s, whereas Bevan would have been in his early 20s at the time. Another important fact that made people question if he was involved was that he had only killed men and teens older than 15. That was kind of his signature. So in August of 2007, it was reported that police were examining old news footage of the case, and they had came across a video clip which showed a man that looked like Bevan watching them search for the Beaumont children. At the time, they were not able to figure out the identity of this man or connect him to Bevan, so that lead went cold. Another suspect in this case is Alan Munro. In June of 2017, detectives were given a copy of a child's diary that had been written in 1966. According to this diary, the day that the Beaumont children went missing, Andrew, who the diary belonged to, this was Andrew McIntyre, he was meant to go diving with his father and Alan Munro, but he was told to stay home. When the pair arrived back, both looked downcast, and Andrew said his father had his head in his hands and was saying, "Shit, shit, shit." He also claims that there was sand and blood in Munro's car. Now, police were able to figure out that this Alan Munro was at the beach during the time of the Beaumont's children's disappearance. He had been convicted of doing this in the past. He was interrogated by the police, but nothing came out of it. Now, another suspect in the case is James O'Neill. In the early 1970s, James was jailed for life for the murder of a 9-year-old boy in Tasmania, which is my little home state, and I do plan on covering that case also. But James O'Neill had allegedly told several people that he was the one responsible for the disappearance of the Beaumont children. However, during his interview, James claimed that he had never been to Adelaide, so it couldn't have been him. They have interviewed James many times and have concluded that he cannot be considered a suspect. And Derek Percy is another suspect. On the 22nd of April in 2007, a report in an Australian newspaper suggested that the Beaumont children may have been killed by this man called Derek Percy. Percy was in a prison unit until his death in 2013 after being found not guilty by reason of insanity in the 1969 murder of Yvonne Toohey. They thought that he could have been involved in the Beaumont children's disappearance as well, but after they'd done some digging, they determined that it just wasn't possible because he would have only been 17 years old at the time. Now, one of the most promising suspects in this case is Harry Phipps. Harry was a businessman who had 2 children of his own and lived close to the beach and bakery where the Beaumont children were last seen on that fateful day. Hayden Phipps, one of Harry's sons, who was 15 at the time, said his father would have been in his 40s. Hayden agreed to do a full interview about his father, but the contents of that interview have never been released, which makes you wonder, what was said? What did Hayden say about his dad in that interview? But Hayden did say that he remembered his dad talking to 3 kids. He said he saw his dad bring 3 kids into their house, and as he was getting closer, he heard gunshots, but he didn't think much of it because apparently this was normal in his house. He went on to say about how his father was a very violent and scary man. He said he carried a gun with him wherever he went, and he also remembers his dad loading what looked to be surfboard covers into the bed of his truck and then driving off. He had assumed the kids had left on their own and thought his dad was carrying surfboard covers. Another thing that doesn't look good for Harry is that a man named David came forward and told authorities that a man that looked like Harry had asked and paid him to dig a hole. Him and his friend often did things on the weekend, just little odd jobs to make some extra money. So when they were offered a reasonable amount of money for digging a simple hole, they agreed. This man wanted the hole dug near his factory, and the men dug the hole without giving it much thought. He said they arrived early in the morning, the man told them to start digging, and they did. The man paid them, and they never saw him again. However, Harry was never actually considered a suspect in this case, even though quite a lot of people think that Harry did it. But police said that he just didn't fit the description that they had been given. Harry was a high-end businessman in the area. He was well known, so wouldn't have more people have noticed him when he had taken that risk and taken someone from his town. But Harry died in 2004, so we will never know. There was no deathbed confession But 10 years later, his son, Hayden, also passed away. But there was a woman who had came forward saying she thinks she may have been sexually assaulted by a man who looked like Harry. Years after he died, Harry's ex-wife decided to let police search his house. When they were going through the basement, they found a white clutch purse. Now, this purse looked remarkably similar to the one that Jane was carrying with her the day that she was taken. When police asked her about this clutch and how her ex-husband may have gotten it, she said it was hers and she had recently bought it. But authorities asked her if she had just bought it, why was it just thrown into the basement? This made her angry, and she then told the police to leave. Was she covering for Harry? So in 2013, authorities decided to dig a hole in the area that the men said they dug the hole years before. But they didn't find anything. Then in 2017, it was found that they were digging in the wrong spot. What the... In January of 2018, ground-penetrating radar, which was used by the uni, found one small abnormality in the soil. So authorities reported that they would be evacuating the site. Now, this evacuation happened in February of 2018. Rubbish, animal bones, things like that were found, but nothing that was linked to the Beaumont children, unfortunately, was found. Jim and Nancy lived in the same house for many years, but eventually they did get a divorce. Over the years, Jim and Nancy always cooperated in the examination of every new theory or lead that came up about their children's abduction. From being taken by a religious cult who were living varyingly in Melbourne, Tasmania or New Zealand, to a clue about a possible burial site. However, again, just nothing came from any of this. Nancy Beaumont tragically passed away on the 16th of September 2019 at the age of 92. She was living in a nursing home at the time and never found out what happened to her children. Jim would currently be 94. He is still alive, but he has chosen to spend his remaining years away from the media. However, the South Australian police still remain informed of his address while the case remains open. And to this day, the case of the Beaumont children remains unsolved. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will try and get another one done really soon. I hope you are enjoying these. Have a great day. Bye.